Radio 2, this is the Bob Harris Show, where we're going to be concentrating for the next best part of half an hour on the music of Genesis, because there's a fantastic live box set that's just been released. Tony Banks is here with me in the studio to talk about it all, and I'll play a track from it first of all. Firth of Fifth is coming up after this. That is completely wonderful. Firth of Fifth. That's Genesis, recorded live at the Rainbow Theatre in 1973. Tony Banks is with me in the studio now. Those were the days.
Well, it's an awful long time ago. But no, it's really nice hearing that. We're really pleased to have found that concept because it's never been released as a totality before. There was a previous album, Genesis Live, which was with Peter singing. But this was a year later, and it includes lots of the songs that were on the album, so selling them by the pound. And they just sound really nice, so we're really pleased with this one.
All the elements of it are so good, aren't they? The playing is fabulous, and the recording quality. When you came across this recording, Tony, in what form was it? Did you find it on reel-to-reel?
Yes, it's on a multi-track. I think in those days, probably 16-track, multi-track. The actual sound on the tape is pretty good. But obviously, with modern mixing techniques and everything, you can really fill it out and make it sound really nice. And on the collection, on this box set, there's a 5.1 version of this as well. So for those people who have that cinema surround experience, they can experience it like that too.
I was talking with a couple of the engineers who'd worked on the Beatles remasters, and they were saying about the quality of the tape when they originally got hold of it, that some of the old edits had just, they put it onto a reel-to-reel machine, and all the tape just kind of fell apart because all the edits fell out.
Well, you have to bake the tapes.
Yes.
We had to do all this stuff. And once you bake them, they're not really good for too many more plays after that, So you then transfer it to some digital medium and then you're okay. You've got it forever.
And then you can mix into that.
That's right. But this, obviously, I think the Beatles stuff, wasn't it they just sort of remaster the original stereo mixes, I think. As opposed to this, obviously, we've gone right back to the original 16 track. So it's completely put together again.
Yeah.
We're able to go right back to the basics, which was what we've done with our whole, not just with this box set, but the previous box sets, which did all our CDs as well. Went right back to the beginning. We just felt it was worth doing, particularly the early days. We felt the mixing wasn't quite as good as it should be and everything.
And the lineup on stage for that particular recording, that was the classic lineup.
It was the lineup with Peter Gabriel singing, and Steve Hackett on guitar,
Yeah. In terms of the body of work, going through everything, Tony, to arrive at this box set of releases, just describe to us the process of doing that.
Well, I think it wasn't quite as difficult as it might seem, because we went back to all the original live albums that we'd done, really, and went back to the original tapes. And we felt that, although we could have had different versions of some of those songs on those albums, we thought we'd stick with the original ones, because for those people who know it, and I suppose to a large extent this CD will sell to people who've at least heard one of the albums before, they perhaps wouldn't want to hear a different version. So we just went back to those versions, made them sound as good as we could. But obviously at the same time, we uncovered a few things that hadn't come out before, like this Rainbow. And, as with all the other box sets we've done, there's always been one or two other little bits and pieces we've found. Because, in fact, on this, again, and a few more songs with Peter singing, we've taken a few songs from the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, a show that we did. We decided not to put the whole of this in this collection, because we'd actually, a few years ago, put out an archives collection with a version of this live Lamb Lies Down on Broadway on it, so we thought we wouldn't want to repeat that. But we just took 3 or 4 of the songs, remixed them, and put them on, just so people could hear them.
Yeah. Were you surprised at how much? It's unusual for a band to be recording so much live material as they go along.
Well, I think we have to thank the American, show, the King Biscuit Flower Hour, which compelled us to record all these shows in the early days, because we had no idea of releasing a live album, really. In fact, the original Genesis live album, we were rather against putting it out ourselves. We weren't totally happy with the sound. I mean, we certainly had no intention of doing one. We thought we were much too early in our career to do a live album. But we had this tape, and the record companies sort of seemed very keen to put it out, so they did in the end put it out.
Yes.
But we didn't do another live album for quite a few years after that.
And it was a marvellous way, anyway, wasn't it, keeping in contact with your American audience without necessarily had to be touring across America and be there.
Well, absolutely. And it just was really nice to have these recordings. I mean, we know they were used elsewhere, I think, but I mean, they just, it's an invaluable sort of collection. From about 1977, 78, we started recording the tours for our own benefit, if you like. And then so we'd probably record more than one show, maybe 2 or 3 shows, and the live albums that came out of it would be a kind of composite of all those things. But we didn't put out live albums for every tour. The Mama tour, for example, we didn't put out a live album for, but there is on the next box set. There's always another box set when it comes to Genesis. Is all the DVDs, the movies that we've done, all the kind of live DVDs, and there is on that, there's a Mama version of the Mama tour, so which we did live DVD recordings from about 1980-81. So there's one from each tour from then on.
Yes. I'm going to play another track, if I may, from the Three Sides Live CD, this one. And this is Turn It On Again. Turn It On Again, Genesis from the album Three Sides Live. Part of the box set of live CDs that are being released by the band. In fact, it came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the box set. And Tony Banks is with me here in the studio. And you were saying about the DVDs that are coming out as well, Tony. I mean, as I say, these represent a huge body of work, but also you can watch the way the band evolved in terms of the staging of these concerts. Because, I remember around the Rainbow time, 73, 74, how theatrical it all was. And then, of course, you have to expand your horizons, don't you, as the venues get bigger, as you move into stadiums and everything else. So the way that all evolved...
Well, it changed a great deal, obviously. Unfortunately, I mean, the live stuff we have here really starts sort of after Phil took over the singing, because we didn't have stuff from the early days, although a few bits and pieces do exist, and they have come out piecemeal over the years. The most entertaining thing actually is Phil's beard as it comes and goes, and the hair as it sort of slowly disappears. Sort of there's one tour he did, and that sort of, turn it on again. The beard was sort of down to about his sort of nipples, But now, of course, he has no hair at all, really. So it's kind of that's interesting. But yes, the stage show did expand as you played the bigger and bigger venues. You had to put on a bigger and bigger show in a way. I mean, stadium, whether you like it or not, the stadium show has a certain excitement about it, and we were always very conscious, even in the early days, of trying to make a show visually interesting as well. And it's even more important the bigger the venue, because you're very small in the distance there, and obviously you have the help with video screens and be able to put particularly the singer up there so people see what's going on. But we've always tried to put on a good visual show as well, and try to do visuals that kind of enhance what goes on stage. And also been involved in some quite interesting developments. I mean, the Very Light, which is sort of it and its copies, has now become kind of the universal standard. Was originally we developed it as a special effect for ourselves. We just were fed up with having to have 100 blue lights, 100 red lights and all that, and thought, well, let's get one light that can do all the colours and can move all over the place and do all the things that they do now.
Yes. So the team of people then that would have backed up the realising of these visual ideas, Tony, were they all coming from the group and then somebody was helping you interpret them into this bigger space?
Well, it's a bit of both, obviously. I mean, we had a lot of ideas. We always try to be very much involved in the process of creating ideas. But we've had some very good people working with us over the years who've come up with their own ideas and been able to develop what we sometimes as a fairly sort of amorphous idea and give us something tangible at the end of it, which has been great. We've been very lucky, I think, with that. It's and in terms of, say, the light, that was actually just the lighting company we're using in America, who were very keen to have someone to sort of, we put a big investment in it, and that's what they really wanted. The idea of a sort of light that produced more than one colour obviously wasn't revolutionary, but to actually get someone to actually say, right, give it a go.
Yeah.
Because the first tour we did with them, I mean, it was like we had as many technicians as we did lights. You started off with maybe 150 lights up in the air at the beginning of the show. You're lucky if sort of 30 were working by the end of it, the first few shows.
Well, I mean, everybody was kind of pushing technology out in those days.
Well, it was, and we were also the first group to go on stage with the Jumbotrons, and we had the same sort of problems with that. That's the big movie screens, the big... And, we used to, by the end of some of those shows, again, half the things had just gone out. They weren't designed to be used in this kind of situation at all. You really were pushing it a bit. It was worth doing, and obviously now... everybody uses these things, so it sort of was worth doing.
So kind of individually and collectively now, what about yourself, Tony? Are you looking back to work of your own and bringing that forward?
Well, I have done, actually. Just one thing. Having done all this remixing of all the albums, the studio albums which we did a few years ago, I thought there's one album of mine which is very close to my heart, which is called A Curious Feeling, which came out in about 1979. It came out at a bad time, really. It's sort of a progressive album that came out sort of somewhere between kind of, I don't know, the Sex Pistols and Spandau Ballet, I think, which is not really the best place to be. But I've always been very pleased with the album, but I always felt the sound could have been a lot better. And having remixed the albums from around that period, which were things like sort of Wyndham Wuthering and Duke and stuff, and they sounded much better, I thought it'd be nice to go back to that. So we spent, with Nick Davis, who's the engineer we've been working with, we spent some time on Curious Feeling, and I'm really pleased with the way it's turned out. And we're actually re-releasing it. To much fanfare, I am sure. But anyhow, it's coming out next week or so. And as I say, it's a nice thing. And I think for people who liked it first time round, it's well worth listening to. And those people who perhaps regret that Genesis didn't do more stuff like the stuff we did in the early 70s, it's definitely the progressive album, fits into that sort of genre, I think.
The single's coming out later this month. It's coming out on the 19th of October. So that should be the one we play, actually.
Play it.
So just talk us into this track for a while.
A Curious Feeling was a kind of concept album written about a man who consciously is losing his mind. And this is somewhere towards the end of the album where he knows it's gone. Well, he knows it's going, but it hasn't completely gone yet. And it's kind of looking back on his life and how was it?
Good luck with all these projects, Tony. It's absolutely brilliant to have this material made available again. And, you know, it's lovely to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, good stuff. Tony Banks, For a While. And this is a single which is coming out on the 19th of October, 30 years after its original release. And many, many thanks again to Tony Banks for being with us here in the studio tonight. In the next hour, my guest will be Stephen...